Hello there, it's Jay here from Jay's Vintage Junk. As you can see, we're down in the new workshop space, and what I thought we'd do today is have a bit of a better look at this thing. You've probably seen this if you watch my videos. I picked this up last year off eBay, and what we've got here, we get the cover off it. This is the first time the cover's actually been off really since I picked this thing up. Ooh. Let me get that out of the way. And basically what we've got here, this is the control computer from a 1980s scanning electron microscope. It's a the electron microscope this came from was an Hitachi S-4000. Was it about 1986 date on it. Now I picked this up on eBay. God knows what a scanning electron microscope cost in 1986, but I paid £1 for this. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't say no for £1. It cost me considerably more than £1 to actually get it back from where I bought it back to my house, but that's another story entirely. What I thought we'd quickly do in this video, I have shown this before. Very briefly when I first picked it up, but now we actually have some space down here that I can actually work in. I thought we'd do a little bit of more of a look at it. Now I'll say straight away, I'm not intending to get this working back as what it used to be. It'd be pointless. I don't have the rest of the scanning electron microscope that this actually was used to control. You'd have another unit about the size of a washing machine that would have gone with this, which was actually the scanning electron microscope proper. All this is the computer and the control electronics for it. But for £1, just think what we can salvage out of this thing. This thing's going to have loads and loads of really, really useful components in it. And what I actually mainly bought it for was the cabinet itself. I just thought this would be so cool to make something out of. And what I'm thinking is some kind of desk for in here basically. I want to really convert this into like a diagnostics bench really. We've got a couple of screens already built into it. I'm thinking about a table at the front here, cutting this out so we've got somewhere to put some computers in and basically doing things like that with it. But before we do any of that, what I would really like to do is actually see whether possibly we could get this thing just to fire up, just so we can just see the computer in it run. Now this isn't there isn't a PC in here or anything like this. This is dedicated hardware that was specifically designed just to run that scanning electron microscope. You know, there's not like a 286 or a 386 PC or anything like that in here. Like I said, it is dedicated hardware designed to do a specific job. And this thing would have cost a lot of money when it was new. When it was part of that original microscope, this would have been a huge amount of money. But what I thought we'd do, I'll get the camera set up a bit closer. And we can have a look at a few of the things that we may have to do just to see if we can actually get this thing to power up. Because unfortunately, when I first saw this on the listing on eBay, it was actually in working order. It's got a 110 volt plug on it there. And I do have a 110 volt supply, but I'm not going to be just plugging it in, and I'll show you why in a minute when we actually get into this thing. But basically, to get this onto my property, I've got 2 cars on my drive which at the moment I can't move. One of them's my Land Rover, and it's well, the engine probably would run on it, but there's no brakes connected up to it or anything like that, so I can't really move that. And the only way I could actually get this down the drive and onto my property was to remove the entire computer section there from the front of it. And to do that, I actually ended up having to cut some wires. A lot just unplugged, but I did actually end up having to cut some wires. So that's one reason why we can't just plug it in and just power it up. And the other reason we'll come to in a minute. What I'll do, I'll get the camera set up a bit better, and we'll have a little look at the actual computer here, and then we'll have a look inside it, and I'll show you the reason why I'm not just going to plug this thing in and see what it does. So I'll set the camera back up and we'll get right back to it. Right, okay, there we go. We're a little bit closer in so we can actually see the console itself. I mean, I don't know how to drive one of these things. I've never seen one of these things actually working proper, but for as far as I can see, we seem to have a fairly standard quirky keyboard here. I mean, it would make you think there's a PC in here. It's a very standard kind of PC layout, but apart from instead of F keys here, we have PF keys. And we have PF1 to PF16, which obviously is not quite standard. The buttons up here, we've got arrow keys up here. So it's not a standard PC layout, but it is very, very, very similar. Then obviously we have over here things which are more to do with the actual fact this is a standard electron microscope. So, you know, we've got magnification, image, shift X and Y for moving the image around. I'm really not sure what the mode controls are for, but we've got run, stop. We've got voltages here and current. Now, we'll be coming back to this soon, but if you notice, they are measured in kilovolts. That's, you know, thousands of volts. So we've got 2 voltage measurements there, and then ultra amps. That's very, very, very small U amps. Basically, it's a like microampage. It's a very, very small current that it uses, but an incredibly, incredibly high voltage. What we'll do, we'll pull this out. I'm saying basically the entire computer section I had to remove from the rest of the computer just to be able to get this down my driveway. But if we pull it out, ooh, essentially, let me see if I can get you in a bit closer there so you can see it. But essentially, I haven't got any grounding on me, but like I said, this is really scrap. These 2 boards here, as far as I am aware, are the computer. We've got, now these are either RAM or ROM here, so we've got some SRAM or some ROM there. Lots and lots of 74 series logic. What I haven't found yet, actually, is the actual processor, and we'll probably find that when we start delving into this thing a little bit more. But here's the problems. Basically, if you notice, we've got some cut wires. A disconnected wire. That's easy. It goes to a point there. That wire there, I had to cut because I couldn't get the other end of it off. And basically, the entire computer, the logic of the computer, is driven by that, and it's just 5 volts. So what I'm planning on doing is essentially using a separate 5 volt power supply. I've got an idea of something I could just knock up out of something that I've got, and use that separate 5 volt power supply to actually try and power this entire console up. I'm pretty sure, actually, if I was to reconnect this and give the feed for that 5 volts, we should be able to get this entire console section here to actually power up and see what it does. The only thing that won't power up, obviously, is the monitors. So we will have to again figure out, see if we can get the monitors to work. They're not 240 volts. These, they will be probably either 12 or 110 volts. I haven't figured out. They could be 24. They're either a low DC voltage or they're going to be 110, 115 volts AC. Again, not a problem. I do have transformers that can allow us to power them up, but it's not just going to be as simple as putting a 13 amp plug on it and plugging it in. Like I said, this thing was designed to run on 110 volts. What I'll do, yeah, I'll probably have to reset the camera. I will spin this thing round, I'll reset the camera, and we can have a look at the back of it and the main reason why I'm not just switching this thing on and powering it up straight away. So, back in a sec. Okay, we're around the back of it now. As you can see, it is a huge unit. Basically, this is the mains input, how it's been. I mean, it was bodged in by whoever had this thing before me. The story I got, basically the guy that I got this off, I I didn't actually speak to him, I only spoke to his dad. He bought this, he bought the entire scanning electron microscope as a spare parts machine for his own scanning electron microscope, because he was just the type of chap that happens to have a scanning electron microscope in his house. And he essentially bought this unit as faulty and incomplete for some parts, not actually off this console, but actually off the scanning unit itself, the microscope itself that he wanted for his own unit. And this was essentially just surplus to requirements. He just wanted shot of it. He did obviously connect a wire up to it, and I did actually see this thing powered up on the eBay listing, but that was, like I said, this prior to that has been thrown in the back of a van. It's had them wires cut, like I said, so I could actually get it into it, and that's why I'm not just plugging that into my 110 volt transformer and seeing what this thing will do. The main reason being, and now I didn't know this until I actually threw this, basically laid this on its back in the back of a van, and my mate Andy over at Vintage Electronics Repair went and helped me pick this thing up, and I hired a little van and we drove over to it, and two of us would basically only just managed to get this into the back of a van, and we ended up laying it on its back, on this back panel here, flat in the back of the van. And by the time I got home, that's when I realised that this thing's got an oil-filled transformer in it, and most of that oil ended up over the back of the hire van. Fortunately, I used some detergent and scrubbed it, and the girl that checked the van in didn't look too closely, or else I'd have been stung with a hell of a cleaning bill for that one. But it does mean, number one, that there is a film of oil all over the inside of here, which I've got to clean out. The other thing means there's a massive, and I do mean massive, oil-filled transformer there, and I don't know how much oil's left in it. And considering I think that thing's capable of producing at least up to like 30-40 kilovolts, we're talking many thousands of volts. I ain't going to be powering this thing up in the state it's in. If that thing could still be in circuit and literally fire up, I don't know. I don't know what condition this thing's in now, especially considering it has lost quite a lot of the transformer oil from in there. I'm not worried about the oil. This thing was from 1985. It's not going to have PCBs or anything like that in the oil. It should be quite safe. It's just going to be a bit of a mare to clean the residue actually out of here. But basically, this is all the rest of the control gear that actually drove the electron microscope. We've got a mains input panel there. Obviously we have the incredibly large oil-filled transformer there with its associated drive circuitry. There's another huge transformer actually back here, which I'm not sure about. Very large transformer, not an oil-cooled one though, so we can have a look at that. And then we have yet more control circuitry down here, massive fans. I mean, the fans even on like a plug connector. It's obviously a mains driven fan. Well, it's 100 volt. Of course, this thing's Japanese. The Japanese used 100 volt AC mains line voltage, as opposed to the standards in the world are really, well, China I think uses 220, we use 230, Europe uses 230, US and Canada use 110. Japan were one on its own, they used 100 volts. So it does look like a lot of the components in here were probably actually designed for 100 volt input. Like I said, this is not going to be a problem. We're really not going to be using much of anything that's in here for what I plan to do with this thing. Really, the only things that I'm really planning to possibly reuse is obviously the cabinet itself, so I really want to do something with this. In fact, we've not had that off yet. Let's whip this back panel off. I've never actually taken, what you've seen of this is what I've seen of this basically. I have not started stripping this thing down yet, but just for curiosity, let me see. Let's have a look at the monitors in the inside of here and see what we've got inside here. Let's grab some tools. Here's where we find there really is a little PC built in here or something. It was actually up in here, but I don't think so. From what I did see of this thing actually running, I don't think there's anything like that in it. But it'd be very interesting to see what is in here. I just think this thing could... It was too good to let to go to scrap, because I'm sure if I hadn't have bought it, bear in mind I was the only bidder on it on eBay, if it had got relisted again, it would have probably ended up just going for scrap metal, to be honest. And it's kind of just looks so retro and sci-fi. I'm sure it's better, you know, it's too good for that. We can find other uses for it. It can be repurposed, like I said, in some kind of command control console for in here. The feeling that these got a bit mangled up when it got dragged across the back of the bag of that van. I'm reckoning this thing probably weighs close to the half a ton mark. Like I said, me and Andy couldn't really lift it on our own. I've had to use lifting equipment just to get it actually up onto this floor. When I put the raised floor in here, it was still down on the concrete floor underneath, and I literally had to use lifting equipment to raise it up to get it actually onto this floor level that we've got now. Right, I think this is the last screw, and then we can have a little peek inside it. Not a huge amount to see. An amplifier unit there. K&E Developments Limited, Cambridge. US style power sockets. So there's loads of things that we can probably salvage and do other things within this. Is that IEEE? That little plug there. It could have IEEE interface on it, considering what it is. But yeah, this video was just a quick more of an overview on the thing. We don't even know what these screens work, whether they're RGB, whether they're just a composite input, whether they're they could even be like a TTL or something like that. That looks very hacked. And just snip the metal out there and bent it up to get the cables through. But what I think we'll do in the next video on this, we're going to need a power supply. So we'll need to sort out some kind of reasonably beefy 5-volt regulated power supply, so we can actually have a go at firing the computer in this thing up. And we've got to figure out what these screens actually need to run them. Whether they need mains voltage, which will, like I say, will be 110 volts, or whether they need, say, like a low DC, like 12 or 24 volts DC to actually get them to power up. So we'll have to figure that out. Like I said, and then we'll have to figure out some kind of 5 volts power supply to actually see if we can get the computer in here to power up. And we'll also have to see about disconnecting and making sure that, let's get you back down, we are going to have to make sure that some way of disconnecting and making sure that that thing there is definitely out of circuit. Like I said, we use our own power supply to power the computer up, and we figure out how we can power them monitors up. That shouldn't be so much of a problem. But when you see a connector, and this is a connector out of the thing, in fact that is going to be really useful to salvage. this here, that's actually the HT lead. That's what you use in television receivers from the line output transformer up to the CRT. And there's loads, jeez, look at the length of it. But this is all the HT lead. And we can see that's actually the connector which would have gone between this unit and the other, the actual electron microscope. That's the high voltage power connector. We have a look inside. That's actually ceramic. So we've got an aluminium outer there, and then the inside of that is actually ceramic. We might actually do a little tear down on that. We'll get that on the bench and have a proper look at it, because that looks like that's some serious piece of connector, really. And imagine, you know, this thing is designed to take very, very, very high voltage. So no current. Looking at the actual display, I don't think this thing really needs a lot of current, but it does need one hell of a lot of voltage to actually do anything. And obviously there is lots and lots of just things that are disconnected. I do know that parts have been disconnected from this, but the actual computer itself is still all there. And even once we've done all that, just think about what we can salvage off this. Even in the just thing of parts, if the capacitors are any good, I mean, they can be tested. These are going to be the top of the top of the top of the range components. I don't think anything in here would have they would have used anything cheap at all. I don't know if we can actually slide it. Oh yeah, look at that. That does slide out. Let me just get you over there. You know, I haven't really done anything, as I said, I haven't really done anything with this thing myself yet. I brought it in from buying it, and it got stuck in here while this was still a garage. It's been here for over 12 months now. When you see things like this going incredibly cheap, sometimes you just have to think, oh sod it, I'll buy it and I'll what I'm going to do with it later. But I'm just seeing the absolute number of parts that we can pull off this thing. Check them resistors out. Ooh, let me see if I can get you down and have a look at these power resistors. Just the tear down value on this thing made it worth a quid. It really did. I don't know if you can make it out down here. Let me see if I can get you onto the onto what I'm looking at. Oops. Can you see what I'm... Where's my hand here? Follow my hand down. Oop. I'm actually finding this really tricky to... There we go. Right, this is what I'm pointing at down here, there. Now you can make those out, but we've got two massive, and I do mean massive, wire wound power resistors in there. They're huge. It's just so much. Every time you look at it, you think, ooh, what's that? There's another interesting little box or something we can have a look at. You know, lots of connectors. I don't know whether that's... Oh, serial, I think, SN. We've got a serial connection, possibly. You know, there is just tons and tons of tear down potential on this entire unit, and then we can start actually looking what we can build out of what's left of it anyway. I mean, this is not something I'm going to completely rush into straight away, but I am going to have a lot of fun pulling this thing apart, and we can actually have a really good look at it. But I've just seen all that 5-volt wire in there. It's all here, and it does look like it all looms together. There's the in fact, it's got its own switch mode power supply right in there, just for the 5 volts. So anyway, in the next video I'm going to do on this, we'll probably start pulling some of this down. We'll certainly see if we can pull that unit out of there. because that is basically all the weight in this thing is that massive oil-filled transformer there. So we can get that out of here. It means that the actual unit is going to be easier to move around anyway. I've got absolutely no use for that thing. I have no intention of actually trying to power it up, but I am pretty certain that there are other people out there that could make a lot of use of a high voltage transformer like that. So I will see if I can find that a new owner. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now. Like I said, this was just a little bit of a rambly updatey video on this thing. So hopefully, without not too far in the future, we will actually have a go at seeing if we can get the computer in this to do anything before we actually really tear the thing down and pull it all out and start making something interesting out of the actual cabinet. So I hope you enjoyed that little update on this project. So thanks for watching and goodbye.